Joining me now is the president CEO of the Job Creators Network, Alfredo Ortiz. Alfredo, great to have you, man.
Hey, John, great to have you. And I have to tell you, I loved your music lead up. I could just imagine you in your white shirt and your red tie headbanging. I could just see it right now.
I do have a suit on today, actually. I have a suit on every day. That's just me. But yeah, I do jam. You know, we're jamming at 6:30 a.m., but we got to get people fired up like yourself. Look, I
love it. I love coming on your show bright and early.
I know you're the only guy that likes to come on at 6 or 6:30, right? So I don't know about that. But it's fun early because I always tell people doing morning drive like I do 6 to 10, where you got to get up every day at basically 3:45 to get on the air and get your act together. It's addictive and destructive. It's addictive because you're the first one. You got the first word. And your audience in the morning is incredibly loyal because it's part of their routine. It's destructive because, you know, you're not getting enough sleep, you put on weight, you get tired. So it's kind of, you know, double-edged sword.
Yeah, that's right. No, I always love being on your show, and I appreciate what you do. Trust me. And how's Virginia Star doing?
I tell you, I love the Virginia Star. We just had a meeting yesterday. Everybody go to thevirginiastar.com, thevirginiastar.com. We hired 3 writers. It's clean. I love what we're doing, and I'm getting a lot of great feedback off it.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, again, thank you, John, for what you do, and we are excited. You were mentioning the polls. Yes, the polls are closing. Hispanic, I'm telling you, we are going to hit that number. I just feel it. I know it. Hispanics figured this thing out. They figured out the Dems were taking them for granted, and that the one president that has done tremendous positive impact, has had tremendous positive impact on the Hispanic community is President Trump. It's just clear. I mean, and they know it. They know this COVID was something out of his control. And but pre-COVID, things were looking really, really good for the Hispanic market. We are going to hit that 41%. I just know it.
Well, look, there was a poll out yesterday by Atlas, I believe, showing the Hispanic vote right now going at 41%. Every time a poll comes out, it's going up. You're an Hispanic American, Alfredo. What do you attribute it to, just beyond the obvious? Is there something else? Is there an underlying, something underlying it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Because if you think about it, only one thing really has changed over the past, let's say, 45 days. And that is the lawlessness that is going on in these Democratic-run cities and states. I mean, it's clear. It's all about safety. Right, and right now, I think people are angry. They're afraid. They're upset. Right, and they are not buying the storyline here that the Democrats and Biden are trying to put out. That Trump is preventing, the forces, to go out and put these things out. I mean, really, they really people really think, and it's actually the opposite, right? People were so concerned that he may actually federalize the National Guard and all that. And now we're supposed to believe from the Democrats that it's actually Trump that's preventing this from happening. I mean, it's ludicrous. It's so funny. But at the end of the day, this is really now about safety, and I think that's why the numbers have closed so quickly, because it's now about your physicality overall, your family, yourself. Do you feel safe? Do you feel safe, for example, going out of your house and walking down the street with your daughter, holding her hand? I mean, do you feel safe doing that? Do you feel safe from your health perspective, right? I mean, right now, we may have a vaccine, John, by end of October, early November. That means that from February, which is basically recognition of the virus, to a vaccine, 8 months. I mean, only under President Trump's direction, and because he was able to get government out of the way and actually help the process, not hurt the process, and not slow it down, were we able to do that? And then you've got the final one, which is financial security, jobs, right? Who's going to be the person who is best at securing jobs, right? Well, it's President Trump. It's so obvious because look what he did pre-COVID, right? We had the best economy in history of the world, basically, pre-COVID. And so it's all about safety, John. And I think that's why the polls are closing.
When you talk about law and order sometimes, law and order is simply the answer to the problem. The concern is safety. We don't run around every day saying we need law and order. We think about safety. And when you see people walking down the street and somebody comes up behind them and hits them over the head with a brick for nothing, just because they happen to not have a Black Lives Matter shirt on, people see that and they're like, well, that could happen to me. When you see a guy walking down the street with his daughter holding her hand and he gets shot in the head and the daughter's standing there with blood all over her, I mean, you can't fathom that this is happening now in America. And so you're right, it's about safety.
Kenosha. I mean, Kenosha, Wisconsin. Look at the pictures of Kenosha. It looks like
it's unbelievable.
It looks like Beirut.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I mean, it's unbelievable, right?
And Kenosha is
happened there.
Well, that's it. See, Kenosha is not New York City. It's not Chicago. It's not L.A. It's not Milwaukee. You know, it's basically in the middle of Wisconsin. And so people, the Rasmussen poll, we had Scott Rasmussen, he's a mutual friend of ours on the other day, who said, you know, his numbers show that 50% of all Americans, cutting all persuasions are now concerned about their safety. 50%.
Yeah. John, it's true. Look, a quick little story on what happened to me. I was downtown D.C., outside of a restaurant there on the corner, Joe's, if you know where that is.
Yes.
I was the last person out. You know, my Uber was delayed. I'm not quite sure why, but it was delayed. And so I'm sitting there by myself. It was dark, pitch dark. The restaurant had already closed. And all of a sudden, 10 guys start circling me on their bicycles. Like, just circling me and yelling things at me. I'm trying to pretend, that nothing's going on. But I have to tell you, John, I was pretty worried. I mean, it's myself with 10 guys, literally circling me on their bicycles.
When was this?
At me.
Alfredo, when was this?
2 weeks ago.
It's unbelievable.
And I bet I have to tell you, John, I'm not going to be going back down there anytime soon. I'm not.
Right. And there wasn't a cop to be found, right?
No, nowhere. There was nowhere to be found. I mean, nowhere to be found. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm just gonna stay here, and hope they just go away. But my gosh, I mean, I have to tell you, I'm not gonna go down there until these things get better.
Well, you can't. I mean, you put your life in your hands.
Right. And so this is real stuff, right? It's not like we're making it up. I mean, I know I get calls from friends all the time that are saying, I'm a little worried about, taking my kids out right now, walking down the street. They live in New York City. And so I think it's this issue of safety, and I wish we would talk about it more from that perspective versus this law and order, just like we were saying. Law and order seems so esoteric, right?
Right.
But when it comes to safety, it really is those three elements, I think, John, and that's why we're really excited, for the campaign, the 10 for 20. And by the way, John, we got a little bit of feedback. People are saying, we got a little confused. Is it 10 this? Is it, whatever? So we also have keepamericaamerica.com. So both of those will take you to, to the same site, to make sure that you know what to do and pledge to vote.
KeepAmericaAmerica.com. That's a little bit easier. KeepAmericaAmerica.com. Both of those work. We're with Alfredo Ortiz. He's the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. Alfredo, you guys put a press release out yesterday. You blasted the deal that's being made here by Mnuchin and Pelosi to keep the government open. You want to elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, on a bigger perspective, outside of that, if we could actually more talk about, if you don't mind, about
sure.
Biden's discussions regarding the PPP, because it is literally just an absolute outright lie what he's saying. He's saying that small businesses did not benefit from the Paycheck Protection Program. And I call BS on this one big time, because having worked directly with Secretary Mnuchin on the Paycheck Protection Program, we know the positive benefits. It saved millions of jobs. 51 million jobs were saved because of the program. And when you look at 87% of the loans, I believe, were under $100,000. That is not big corporate money. Small businesses were saved, and I go all across the country. Whenever I talk to small businesses or any business, quite frankly, that's a privately owned business, and I ask them, I go, what about the Paycheck Protection Program? Like, oh yeah, no, God, if it hadn't been for that, I would have had to let go of all of my employees. I mean, so Biden is out there again, because the truths are just so inconvenient for the left, and literally because they have nothing to say to defend themselves, they just lie. They just literally lie, and that's why we really wanted to blast Biden on this one, because And then instead of trying to figure out how can you work with Congress, how can you be, an advisor to Pelosi on this one to make sure that we, at least at a minimum, John, you benefited from the Paycheck Protection Program. You know
Absolutely.
Exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
I mean, if it hadn't been for that, I'm sorry, but you may not be talking to me right now.
I would have had to lay at least one person off. Picked up the work myself. I wouldn't have been able to expand my company, buy the other business. We'd have been contracting. I mean, I lost during the COVID, advertising wise. We lost, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you can't. People aren't going to advertise when they're not open. So we lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Without that, I'm laying people off. And so That's just the reality of this situation. So to sit there for Biden to say, "Oh, it didn't help small businesses," I mean, he's a freaking moron, okay? Because he hasn't talked to small businesses.
Yeah, and that's the one that I really just want to keep nailing him on this one, because I will not let him get away with this kind of lies. I mean, I will not, because we, at Job Creators Network, we've been pushing for small businesses for years now. And when COVID hit, we completely converted our entire organization how to help small businesses. And I know for a fact that the Paycheck Protection Program helps small businesses.
It helped tens of thousands of small businesses. Look, everybody focused on the bigger companies that took advantage of it, like the Los Angeles Lakers, right? Like any program you do, and there was people set up that, prioritize the big companies. Anything you do that quickly, there's going to be that element in it. And hopefully, the next time we go it, that gets cleaned up. But you don't throw the baby out for the bathwater, okay? So, some of the things in it were not perfect. It was put together in like 15 days or something. It was lightning fast to help people. It was real. It's helped tens of thousands of small businesses stay afloat. And so now we're going to say, because, this company got it, that company got it, bigger companies were prioritized with Wall Street banks, with their lobbyists. Look, we get it. But sometimes you have to look at the whole picture. And you can point those out, but the PPP was a lifesaver, and now we're looking for a second round, because remember, the first round of PPP was only for 8 weeks. Well, business hasn't come back. 40% of businesses are still suffering or going under. Businesses hasn't come back. So there needs to be a second round of that to keep people employed, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's what Biden should be focused on and trying to help. I mean, he's the one that's open to a national lockdown that we know would devastate small businesses. He's the one that sets the tempo for the Democratic governors and these Democratic mayors who are imposing these absolutely strict asinine gathering restrictions, right, that are hurting entrepreneurs and, quite frankly, is completely delaying the economic recovery. I mean, this could be something that he could be leading on, and he's not. All he's trying to do is weave, again, more lies, and more lies. And look, this is what frustrates me so much about the Democratic Party. And then, I got to throw in, the whole Nancy Pelosi thing. I mean, even for 2 seconds, because again, I love how, they put out, these restrictions, and then they go ahead and do something completely opposite to what they're saying, And my favorite line that I now have for Nancy Pelosi, by the way, is "Do as I say, not as I hairdo."
I love it. Well, it's the whole Marie Antoinette thing, right? I mean,
exactly.
Basically, let them eat cake, and I'll do what I want. The hypocrisy of the Democrats is unbelievable. But you're right. For Biden to be blasting PPP, which was an unbelievably successful program put together. What was that whole thing? It was like a few weeks. It's unheard of in this country.
John, in 10 days, it went from being signed to actually being executed. It's unbelievable. And again, 5.2 million loans put out to small businesses, right? 51 million jobs saved. And this is why, all they can do now is just lie. John, we cannot let Biden get away with his claim of small business, right? That he's going to help small business. How? With $4 trillion in new tax cuts, with new regulations like out of the Green New Deal. I mean, we cannot let him get away with that, John.
Well, you heard what he said yesterday, Alfredo. He said in Kenosha, when he was at that scripted conference where it was supposed to be a town hall and people were given a script of what to read the question, right? And he says, well, I can't tell you about what my tax plan is. My staff will shoot me. I mean, are you kidding me? You're not going to tell us what your tax plan? You can't tell what the tax plan is because it's a disaster for businesses and for workers. That's why he can't tell anybody what his tax plan is, Alfredo.
John, his tax plan is this: read my lips, all new taxes.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
his tax plan. $4 trillion in all new taxes. It will devastate small businesses. And like I said, and when you think about small businesses and who owns those small businesses, we're talking, huge in terms of, the minority population, small businesses, the backbone of our country. That 2/3 of small business, there were 60 million people employed at its peak. We got to get back to those numbers. This is the backbone. It's the engine of our country. And so that's why we have keepamericaamerica.com. Going, and we need to make sure that if there are Americans out there who care about the free enterprise system, their freedoms, and their way of life, they have to go to keepamericaamerica.com because it is the American dream that's on the ballot this year.
KeepAmericaAmerica.com. We're with Alfredo Ortiz. He is the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. KeepAmericaAmerica.com. Alfredo, let's get very quickly back to the $500 billion deal that's been made now to keep the government open. The administration proposing $1.3 trillion in another aid package. The Democrats and Pelosi came down to $2.3 trillion. Why can't we just compromise here and get this done? What's the problem?
Well, because she doesn't want to give Trump a win. I mean, that's the bottom line. But we can't acquiesce. We can't give in to this kind of basically ransom. And they're using our kids too. By the way, John. I mean, when you're looking at what now they have the teachers union basically doing walkouts, effectively, or sick outs, unless their demands are met. Like defunding the police. Again, going back to safety. I mean, how is this helping our kids? Right. So again. The Democrats aren't doing anything, and they're throwing around this money like it's monopoly money. I mean, you see what our debt ratio now is. I mean, it's now at World War II levels. Look, we had to do what we had to do, but there's also money already still available, John, that we can tap into that hasn't even been used yet, allocated from the first CARES Act. And so I think it's not a bad idea to have a little bit of fiscal discipline, and we are seeing. The rebound. We're seeing, the V recovery that President Trump had promised. We are seeing that. You saw the jobless claims numbers yesterday came, well below a million now. I actually expect a pretty good jobs report later this morning, and we're going to continue to see, improvements in the jobs market. So, and quite frankly, the whole defunding piece has blown up in the face of the Democrats. So, all they're trying to do now is delay. I mean, this is such a Democrat strategy. Quite frankly, Pelosi is the master of it. But we can't we can't give in to this ransom. We just can't.
Alfredo Ortiz, spot on as always. This race now is about safety. Safety. Go to keepamericaamerica.com. Alfredo Ortiz, president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. Alfredo, thank you.